In this video, we're going to show you to install the driver's side front CV axle on your Toyota Camry, located behind your front wheel. Use a pry tool and go ahead and pop off that center cap. Set that aside. Use a 21mm socket to go ahead and loosen and remove the lug nuts. Remove the wheel and set it aside. Loosen the nut on your tie rod using an 18mm socket. I'm going to apply some upward pressure on our tie rod end, and I'm going to strike the knuckle right here. Release that and set it aside. Using a 14mm socket, want to loosen and remove the nut for the sway bar end link. Go ahead and move that link out of the way. Using a 12mm socket, loosen and remove the bolt for the brake flex hose right here. Using a 22mm socket and wrench, I want to go ahead and loosen the bolt and the nut here. Using a pair of cutters or pliers, we want to remove the cotter pin on our spindle. These cotter pins are a one-time use, so be prepared to replace that. Using a 30mm socket, we're going to go ahead and loosen and remove the axle nut. Go ahead and set that aside. You want to check your axle, make sure that it is free inside the wheel hub. If you push on this and it is stuck, you definitely want to go ahead and loosen this. Do not smash the end of this with a hammer, as you're going to mushroom over the axle and you won't be able to reuse that if you needed to. Let's go ahead and remove the bolts for our strut here. Now when doing this here, you want to make sure that the knuckle doesn't drop and rip or pull on this flex hose here. If you have to, make sure you can get a securing strap of some sort to keep this knuckle from falling too far. You can still go ahead and anchor it to the strut if you need to. Just allow this to come down. So we're going to work on this here, separating this strut from the knuckle. If you want to, you can use a pry bar. And pop that out like so. Now I did go ahead and tuck our tie rod back onto the knuckle. I just didn't put the nut on it. Let's go ahead and start working the axle out of the wheel hub. Gonna swing that knuckle down. Pull that axle out. Now I want to go underneath here, and we're going to use a pry bar between the back side of the axle and the transmission, and we're just going to gently give it a quick pop and eject that out of the transmission. So we have our pry bar up behind the axle. And just going to give this a quick little bump. There we go. So by tapping a small pry bar on the ridge of the inner axle stub shaft there, we're able to break that C-clip free from the inside. Now we do have a catch can or bucket underneath to catch any transmission fluid that should come out. Go ahead and pull that out. Insert the axle, line it up. Now when you're doing this job here, you want to inspect the seal on the transmission right where you insert the axle into. If that seal is torn or worn, you want to go ahead and replace it at this time. Ours was in good shape, so we didn't have to touch it. Okay, we were able to get the axle slid in a little bit. Bring our axle up a little bit, and we want to go ahead and tap this into place to go ahead and seat that axle the rest of the way. You just want to be careful that you don't rub this boot on the strut when you're doing this. Try and get that as level as possible. Use a rubber mallet or dead blow. Once that axle is fully seated, slide that shaft over, put it into the back of your wheel hub, feed this back up and in, make sure that your flex hose is on the right side of that strut. Get that axle shaft to come through the middle. Push this up in place. Let's go ahead and throw that axle nut on here. Just going to start a couple threads. Let's work our strut bolt back into the knuckle here. We can go ahead and install the 10mm bolt for our brake flex hose here. Tighten that down. Tighten down our knuckle bolts here. Install the nut for our tie rod end. Let's tighten that down. Torque down the 2 bolts here from the strut to the knuckle to 156 foot-pounds. Do this for both of them. Torque down the tie rod end nut to 36 foot-pounds. We're going to install 2 lug nuts. Using our pry bar, we want to go ahead and lock this in place. I'm going to go ahead and torque this to 217 foot-pounds. Once you're done torquing there, loosen and remove the lug nuts. Install the retainer. I want to get a new cotter pin. Slide that on through. Go ahead and Bend that up and around. And we're going to cut off the other side. Go ahead and get our nuts installed here. We're going to use our Allen key here. This is a 5 mil. Go ahead and torque the sway bar end link nuts down to 29 foot-pounds. Go ahead and take your wheel. Line up those studs there and get our lug nuts started. Go ahead and torque your lug nuts down to 76 foot-pounds. Do this in a crisscross or a star pattern. If you have a hubcap or a center cap, go ahead and install that now. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.